We now have, I believe, a city manager report.
And I have a report tonight, which I'm going to deliver from the front here,
okay.
And it's some details about our Shroyer Road project that we talked about a few years ago. I want to share some good news about how that project has unfolded and how that roadway is performing. So if you allow me to move to the podium.
Yep.
So realizing that I'm right at the second to the last on the agenda, and we want to try to get through this meeting quickly, I'll go rather fast here, but again, have some really good information to share here, and I think the community will appreciate this detail. So as you will recall, in 2017 we completely changed Shroyer Road. Folks that are moving into Oakwood or have over the last couple of years don't know what the roadway used to look like and have no idea how it used to function, but obviously it's very much a different road than it was 3 short years ago. So the picture you see here was right at the beginning of the construction, and you can see just one large expanse of pavement. It was 44 feet of concrete, or as asphalt overlaid concrete, from curb to curb, and we had 2 lanes in each direction, 2 northbound and 2 southbound. The timing of this presentation tonight is the function of a recent inquiry that I received from the Dayton Daily News, and this article you see here was printed in the paper last week and came as a result of a 2-page paper that we put together. Page 1 basically describing the project, the purpose of it, the objectives, and then page 2, how the roadway has been functioning since the project was completed. So in Oakwood, we basically have 2 thoroughfares that go through our community. The rest of our city is residential streets. Obviously, we have State Route 48, Far Hills Avenue, the State Highway, and we have Shroyer Road. And Shroyer Road in Oakwood is 1.1 miles long. Of course, we have Kettering on the south side and Dayton on the north side. And what we did with the project is we eliminated the 4-lane section, or we converted the 4-lane section to a 3-lane section. And we ended up with 1 lane northbound, 1 lane southbound, and a dedicated left turn lane in the middle, and then a couple bike lanes. And what we did is called a road diet, and I always get a chuckle when I run into the mayor of Kettering, because he thinks that term is just hilarious, road diet. But I guess the basic reason that term was chosen for this particular roadway conversion is because, in fact, you're taking a larger roadway and you're shrinking it down a bit. And under the right conditions and circumstances, the roadway can actually move more vehicles than the larger road, and as you'll see here in a few minutes, the number of crashes that occur on it can be dramatically reduced. So this is a picture of construction just near the beginning of the project, and again, this was obviously taken from a drone, but you can see what I often refer to as the landing strip sort of condition of that roadway. And because it was such a large piece of pavement, it really encouraged speeding. And we had a lot of ticket writing out there, and we had a lot of people speeding on that roadway. Here's a picture. This was on the cover of our 2017 City Annual Report, and this is the final product. And you can see a dramatically changed roadway with, again, the left turn lanes, the bays, the bike lanes on both sides, and then 1 through lane in each direction. And here's a aerial shot, and this shows you about the middle of the photo there, one of the pedestrian crossings. We have 2 within the project and a 3rd one on the far north end, which I'll explain here in a few minutes. So the project included several different components. Again, the construction of the left turn lanes at each of the 16 cross-street intersections, and I'll tell you that for a stretch of a little over 1 mile of roadway, having 16 cross streets, that's a very dense number of cross streets, and it's a bit unusual, but it made this particular roadway a good candidate for the projects. Again, we've added the bike lanes. We importantly increased the space between the traveling lane and the sidewalk from 2 feet to 7 feet. So in the pre-construction condition, why if you were walking along the street side edge of the sidewalk and put your arm out, at least with my arm, I literally, my arm would have extended past the curb and could have been struck by a vehicle passing. That's how close the sidewalk was to the traveling lane. Now with that 5-foot bike lane, why we have a full 7 feet there, which makes the pedestrian experience much safer. We built the raised medians with the trees in the mulched area, which is a great ambiance enhancement for the corridor. And then, as I mentioned before, the crosswalks. We have one north of Wonderly, one north of Telford, and then we also have a rebuilt crosswalk / bike crossing at the north end of the project, just north of Delwood. All three of those are equipped with the flashing beacon technology, so as a pedestrian or a cyclist would want to cross there, they push a button and a bright beacon flashes to alert motorists. So why did we do the project? Well, I can tell you that it was about roughly 50 years ago when Shroyer Road, when the 2 lanes were added to Shroyer Road. So before, sometime in the 70s is when Shroyer was converted from a 2-lane to a 4-lane roadway. And our research a few years ago told us that that was done in preparation of an inner beltway that was part of a regional transportation improvement plan. That regional beltway, inner beltway, was never constructed, ergo the need to have 4 lanes in Shroyer and to accommodate potentially larger traffic volumes that never came to fruition. Nonetheless, for about 50 years, we maintained the roadway with the 2 lanes in each direction. Back in 2010, 2011, we were programming that roadway, that 1.1 mile section, for a resurfacing project. And because it's a thoroughfare, much like Far Hills or State Route 48, it's eligible for federal funding through ODOT and coordinated locally through MVRPC. And when we initially applied for or worked towards getting that project programmed, our engineer Kevin Weaver and I talked about the idea of maybe reducing this to a 3-lane section, but at the time we didn't pursue it. In 2015, right after the school year started, we had a pedestrian struck, an elementary school student. Fortunately, the driver of the vehicle anticipated that the child was going to step out into the street and was braking heavily when the impact took place, and the child sustained very minor injuries. But that led to, and this is a critical part here, a grassroots movement that led to a group of citizens coming together to say that, Shroyer Road is dangerous. We have 1 row of Oakwood homes on the east side of Shroyer, so anyone living there that might have kids that obviously go to Oakwood schools, they have to find a way to cross Shroyer Road. And that condition of 2 lanes in each direction with no center median or anything created a situation where you really had to look for a large gap and then make a run for it, essentially. And initially, that citizen group asked for a traffic signal to be put in, but we very quickly determined that building a signalized intersection maybe midway down the roadway, for the folks that live on either end, they're looking at upwards of a half-a-mile walk to get to that signal, and the vast majority of people won't make that walk. They'll continue to try to run across the street. So that was one reason not to pursue the traffic signal. The other was that the traffic volumes, including pedestrian volumes, at each of those 16 intersections, why none of them met the warrants required by the state of Ohio to justify the installation of a traffic signal. So A, we don't think it would have really solved the problem. B, it was not justified under the state warrant program. So we engaged then in a deeper study of the corridor to see what else we could do, and this is how we settled on the road diet concept. The key part of this roadway qualifying for that was the traffic volume. And we have just between 14 and 15,000 vehicles a day that use Shroyer Road, and that was just below the numbers that you could expect traffic flow to continue to work properly when you reduce from 4 lanes to 2 in each direction. So, as you know, any major change in Oakwood brings people to public meetings, and we have a few folks here tonight, but as you remember, back in 2016, we had some heavily attended meetings of people concerned about what we were proposing, and rightly so. But at the end of the day, the numbers and the engineering study really justified, again, this road diet concept, and so you approved it and we implemented it. And importantly, the primary focus was safety and reduction of accidents. That's what the main focus of the project was. So any and all police departments in Ohio are required by the state to submit accident data. So there's a database. It's maintained under this TIM system by ODOT, and it's readily available for traffic engineers and others to access to do research on roadway sections. So we use that database, and basically what you see here is before the project, over a 3-year period, 2014 to 2016, we had 62 crashes on that roadway. And importantly, about 25% of those were crashes that resulted in injury, and that's a high number. A much higher number compared to statewide averages is that third bullet, which shows that almost 40% of the accidents were caused by rear-end crashes. And the explanation for that is very simple. With all those 16 cross streets, there has been and continue to be a very large number of left turn movements, either northbound left turn into Oakwood or southbound left turn into Kettering. And prior to the project, every vehicle that was sitting in the center lane, either northbound or southbound, waiting for a gap to make that turn, why they had cars behind them approaching. And many of the accidents that we found through the research were not the first car, because the first car typically can see a car stop there waiting to make a left turn, but it's the second and third car. And oftentimes what would happen is the second car waiting would wait for a gap to go to the curb lane to continue on, and when they would make that abrupt movement, why a car coming from behind would not see the essentially parked car waiting to turn left, and you would have a rear end crash. And with the excessive speeds, which the speed count we did in 2016 showed, we were 6 to 11 miles per hour above the speed limit, why you can imagine what those rear end crashes looked like. So these are our numbers here of total crashes, again, in 2014, 15, and 16. The blue bar is damage, property damage only. The red is injury. And I'll show you in a minute the comparison to the after construction. So again, the objectives were to reduce the number of crashes, the severity of crashes, ergo the amount of injuries or extent of injuries, and then also to make a safer environment for pedestrians and cyclists. And we also used the project as an opportunity to enhance the corridor. And if you think back to our city comprehensive plan, there's a chapter in there about different parts of Oakwood that we want to, over time, want to look at enhancing. And the Shroyer corridor has always been mentioned there as one of our neighborhoods that could stand to be improved in terms of keeping that residential feel. So this project gave us an opportunity to work on that. So here are the after construction numbers, 17, 18, and 19. And if you look at these side by side, you can see the dramatic drop in not only total accidents, the blue bars, but probably more importantly, the accidents with injuries. So basically, if you look at the red bars, we had 15 accidents with injury 3 years prior, and just 2 in the 3 years since the construction. These two bar charts, if you look at the y-axis, one is 0 to 20, one 0 to 10. I should have made these the same, so visually you would have seen the impact more dramatically, but the numbers are very significant. So basically, prior to the project, we had 62 crashes. After, we had 21, so a 66% reduction in accidents on Shroyer Road. Looking at the severity of accidents, we had 15 with injury pre, just 2 after, so an 87% drop in accidents with injury, and a very dramatic drop in the speeds that folks are driving. And I can tell you, and I'm sure the kids behind me that are driving, which I think they probably all are, can tell you that it's hard to speed on Shroyer anymore. Back in the day, it was easy and it was a natural thing, but now it's much more comfortable to drive the posted speed limit. And here's an interesting statistic which bears out the fact that the best way to control speeds is through the design of a roadway and not through enforcement. And so what we have here, basically by reconfiguring the roadway, is a significant drop in the speeds and the resulting drop in the ticket writing on Shroyer. And looking at 2016, we had 236 tickets. 2018, just 36. I mean, that's a very dramatic drop. And this frees up our officers to patrol other parts of Oakwood as opposed to sitting out there like they used to. So all in all, it was a very successful project, and I have plans to, in fact, Lori and I have talked about this, to look at the property values in terms of resale of the homes on both sides of Shroyer. Now it's going to take, need to let a few years pass, but at some point, maybe in a year or two, we're going to look at sales. And I think what we're going to see, anecdotally, I've already heard that the values have gone up and homes are easier to sell, but I think that'll bear out in hard facts if we take a deeper look at that within a year or two. And I'll close with just thanking a few folks. You met Scott Knabel. He was the traffic engineer that did the study for us. Did a fantastic job. The MVRPC staff, under the direction of Brian Martin, the executive director, worked with us to change the scope of what originally was a resurfacing project to building the center medians and reconfiguring the roadway, so we appreciate their help. Likewise, the staff up in Sydney at ODOT District 7 that managed the flow of the federal money for this project was very helpful. And a couple of their folks participated in the public meetings that we had here. And then finally, our colleagues to the south here at the City of Kettering. This was a great partnering project. You'll recall that the City of Kettering did a roadway asphalt surface overlay of their section of Shroyer from the Oakwood Corp line near Dorothy Lane to Stroop. And that was part of our project. We did a joint project together, so it was all bid together. And we ended up hiring the City of Kettering Engineering Department to prepare the detailed plans for our section of the project, as opposed to using an outside consultant. And they did a fine job, and we appreciate their help as well. Happy to answer any questions. Gotta love drones anymore. You can get all kinds of pictures of them. I think most people that I've heard from have said nothing but positive things about the conversion.
In 2016, it was the end of the world. But in
2016, yes, we have many files for this project. But there is one pretty thick one that's dedicated to the public outreach component that was required for the federal funding. And there were quite a number of written responses back from citizens expressing concern that this would not work, and there were going to be backups, and none of that has happened. And importantly, the volumes, the number of people using Shroyer has not changed dramatically. So we're still getting the same 14,000 to 15,000 people being able to conveniently pass through our city.
Well, when we held that special meeting with some of the citizens, one of their main concerns was they were concerned about the speeding and all the excess traffic on Delane and Hathaway. I mean, even actually all the way over to Schaefer. And you know, that in my mind, that has not happened. I think there's just as many cars on Shroyer now as there was before. And the key to it is that it's actually a smoother ride now, and the fact that you don't have to stop and wait for someone to turn left. It's just,
Right.
you just go straight. You know, and then actually at the beginning, we even said one of our issues could be RTA buses could stop and might hold you up for a little bit, even though there were some, I don't remember the exact number, I don't know if you remember, we had some of the bus stops taken away just to help that situation, but there's still plenty of bus stops out there on both sides. And actually, by doing a little last minute changes to the scope of the curbs, you actually can go around the buses now when they stop, and it's not a safety hazard either. It actually works because I don't know if officially at every bus stop there's a opening for a left turn lane, but it works. You're not driving near the curb, you're actually going into the left turn lane and you're just going right around, so it works fine. Right. I drive on the road a lot due to where we live, and there's no issues there at all. The project turned out wonderful.
I agree. Okay, any other questions for the city manager? Okay.